Hey guys, welcome to Digit.in, and today we're going to be reviewing the Realme X. Now this is the smartphone that is top the line in Realme's portfolio of devices. The unit we have is the one with 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage and costs 19,990. In this price bracket, there's quite a few commendable contenders, you would say, most notable ones being from Xiaomi itself. But let's go ahead and take a look at how this particular phone, the Realme X, performs, and of course how it stacks up against the competition. So starting off with that, we're going to talk about the performance at the very first beginning. So now the performance of the Realme X is actually pretty standard when it comes to the mid-range segment, but that's also because with the Realme 3 Pro that we reviewed earlier, there was sort of a new benchmark being set across various of our tests. For example, when it came to gaming, the Realme 3 Pro beat out the Redmi Note 7 Pro, and the Realme X over here is continuing that tradition. When measuring gaming performance using Geekbench, we got 30 FPS stable in both PUBG and Asphalt 9. We also tested it against a few other games like Shadowgun Legends, and again we got a pretty stable frame rate of 30 FPS, and the stability across all three games was about between 97 and 99%. That's actually very commendable for a phone that's running on the Qualcomm Snapdragon 710 processor. Is it the 8GB of RAM that helps? Well, maybe. But moving past that, even benchmark numbers, the Realme X did pretty well. So as far as benchmarks go, the performance was well within our expectations. On Geekbench, the Realme X scored about 1455 and 5938 on Geekbench's single and multi-core tests respectively, which is pretty good. Then even when it came to the PC Mark 2.0, we had a pretty good score of about 6513. You can actually see all of the benchmark numbers in our charts that are on the screen right now. This is both CPU and GPU performance. So of course what we do know is that when it comes to performance for a mid-range phone, the Realme X does not leave a lot of room for complaint, and that's also because ColorOS 6 has been beautifully worked on. Personally, it's not an OS that I am very fond of, but it's actually pretty light on the system. The animations are smooth. The OS, the multitasking, it works pretty flawlessly in fact, and there's not been any room for complaint. I for one have not seen a single app crash in the last 1 week that I've been testing this phone. So that's, good hardware married with good software always yields impressive results, and that's what we're seeing on the Realme X. Now when we come to the camera bit of this phone is where we have some room for complaints. For starters, there's a 48 megapixel primary camera on the back, which by default is giving you binned images at 12 megapixel. That works great. The focusing in daytime works very well as well, and I was actually able to get all of my photos in focus except for one. Now there is a particular shade of pink that most smartphone cameras struggle with in focusing, and the Realme X was no exception. So moving past that, shooting in both 1x and 2x, even though this does not have a telephoto lens, the images are pretty decent. They're not that bad. The colors are actually very good. The 12 megapixel results show that the images are sharp. There's good contrast. There's adequate dynamic range, but there is a certain lack of detail in these images. That being said, if you were to shoot in 48 megapixel native resolution, the results would get worse because when you bin the pixels, the result gets better. Same thing for the front-facing 16 megapixel camera. The result is by default bin to 4 megapixel, and it produces impressive images. What really did actually stand out for both the rear and the front camera is the ability of both of these to handle subjects, especially when they're backlit. So you will see a lot of photo samples with the subject being backlit, and even then the camera was able to focus, yes, and expose properly for the subject. So overall the camera is decently impressive, but where it falls short is in low light. Despite being a binned image from both the front and back, the low light photos left us asking for way more. We in fact saw noise coming into some of the photos taken from the main camera, and that's something we haven't seen in a while. Typically there's very aggressive noise reduction, so you don't see the noise but you also lose detail. In this case, we see noise, we lose detail, and the images are also far less sharper than they should be. So low light, maybe you'd be better off using the flash. Now let's talk about the design. Personally, this is a beautiful looking phone. It's nice to look at. The sheen on the back makes it look like a pearl, but it is very much like a plastic bag. It feels light. It weighs 191 grams and it's 8.6 millimeter thicker and heavier than the Realme 3 Pro. But at the same time, it does not feel flimsy. The buttons are rock solid. The tactile feedback is pretty good. And most importantly, the in-display fingerprint sensor is very fast. We've actually verified that this is doing the whole secure unlocking and not just unlocking when it detects a fingerprint, because I have only one thumb registered and it did not unlock with any other finger except the one registered thumb. So thumbs up to that. And talking about the display, this is another very impressive part about this phone. We actually clocked a maximum brightness of 752 lux on this, and we've checked, double and triple checked that result, and every single time it's 752, 751 lux. So that makes it, as of now, the brightest mid-range display we've tested. And that's probably because this is also an AMOLED, it's not an IPS display. But manufacturers in the past have done this, where they've launched a phone with a very high brightness level for the display, but with consequent OTA updates, in order to optimize battery life, they turn down the peak brightness. Whether Realme will do this or not remains to be seen. The 3765 mAh battery on this thing surprisingly lasted a very long time in our testing. For Geekbench battery test, it lasted a little over 9 hours. On our video loop test, it lasted a little over 10 hours, about 10 hours 40 minutes. And even while driving, while gaming, we didn't really notice that much of a battery drop. We do 15 minutes of game time, 30 minutes of streaming over Netflix, 1 hour of GPS navigation, and the battery drop was pretty in line with other phones. In fact, it was lower than what we've seen typically. The other really great thing about the battery life on this phone is how quickly it charges. Because the Realme X supports VOOC 3.0, we were able to charge this phone from absolute dead to 100 in about 92 minutes. That's very impressive, especially if you're looking at a completely dead phone. So all comes down to this. The digit rating for the Realme X is 72, and that is a very impressive score for any device in the mid-range segment in our tests. The Realme X does perform fairly well. The display is pretty impressive. The cameras do need a little bit of improvement, and the design, while it looks good, could have been sturdier. So that has been our review of the Realme X. Thank you guys for watching this video, and in case you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching.
For the latest technology updates, subscribe to Digit.in and don't forget to hit the bell icon.